Hello. This afternoon I'd like to show you a book that I have just finished, a junk journal. It's made for a customer who asked me to make it similar to the one that I made previously called Teas, T-E-A-S, and Reads, Teas and Reads. So it's about books and it's about tea, but also she asked that I put in some information about books, books, of course, is reads, and then about clocks and typewriters. So this outside is wrapping paper that I found at a thrift store. Most of what I make comes from thrift stores. Most of what I use comes from thrift stores. I buy very little brand new. And then the spine is 3.5 inches thick, and it has this lace panels on it. This is what the lace panels look like. I have a whole bunch of it that I found at the thrift store in a big bundle, and it was $8.50. And I have just really enjoyed being able to use it. It is a little flimsy for the tie, so what I did was I put a lining of a satiny kind of ribbon on it, and it had been, I dyed it. It was a goldish, sort of light goldish sort of ribbon. You could see the flecks of gold, and then sort of a pinkish, and so I added that to it and hope that it will, and of course have stitching on this. I do a lot of stitching in my books. But anyway, it's the two pieces of lace here. This piece is a wide piece, and then this came, was a little bit less wide, and then I had the cross over here, and then brought it over to close the book. And on the outside of the book, I've used transparency paper or transparency plastic. It's acetate, and I put some goodies in there. This is a sample of a piece of lace that may have gone on a collar, or and in the front of it, it's a decoration for a dress. And I found this idea from Old Ducina, who Old Ducina, C-I-N-A. And Old Ducina. She has really good ideas if you can find her on YouTube. And then I make a lot of these from the two-sided to use up some of this scrapbooking paper that's been in my collection for many years. And then I use some handmade paper to stick this in, so you have some extra paper to write on. And then of course I can't have it without sticking a bag of tea in. So it's 4 signatures, but I found when I was putting the book together that only so many pages would fit between the 3.5 inch spine. So the last 2 are 6 pages each, and the front 2 are 5 pages each, which makes a total of 88 pages for the book. I use the same glitter or the same wallpaper, wrapping paper, and this is just some writing paper if she wants to put information about this book belongs to, so forth and so on in there. Use a lot of lace. This is handmade lace here, and then I have a silvery kind of lace along the inside here. And I have a wide piece of lace that goes through here where the spine is. So I use a lot of lace. I'll use a lot of different fabrics to put in the books and to add to the books. Scraps, a fabric that I have found along the way in different stores. A tea bag. This is a used tea bag that I made and put a little bit of decor on it, a couple of buttons. Then this is fabric that is raised upholstery fabric, and it's 3D, so it's got these flowers and this part paneling. It's just so pretty, And then this is another piece of it. So I cut both of those out and use them as a pocket, and have stuck a couple of tags, a bookmark and a tag. This is a quote by Anne Frank that I used in there. And then this is an example of an article out of Tea Time magazine where Royal Doulton China Company was wanting to celebrate its 100 years making china. And they started, so it's been a while, because I think it was 1990 to 2000 or something. So it was an old magazine. And they talk about how to commemorate 100 years of craftsmanship. And so each year in this article, to celebrate, they put a piece of their china in there and gave a little history of the china, or the time in history when the china was popular and famous. So I had to include a few of those. It wasn't able to include just a tremendous number, but there was 10 of them in the magazine. This is a paper from Etsy Sellers, Digital Downloads. I have run this on photo paper that I found at the thrift store, and this comes from Mrs. Coggs Crafts. It's tags of people reading that I've included a lot of little charms. She asked for clocks, and I was able to find a charm in my collection that has a clock on it. So lots of charms throughout. The paper that this seller had books in it. It was books and just beautiful flowers, and the colors just were so pretty. And then this comes from a set of books that I have found on Thrift Books. They're long books, and they have full pictures of different homes or gardens and such, and country houses. This one is in Sussex, so I had to put them in here. So I've got some of those in here because they're so pretty. Nice pictures. This is another piece of the upholstery fabric, 3D, that I made into a pocket. This is another used tea bag that I have added a little motif to. I made a handmade tag. I went through a phase where I wanted to make all of these cups from trying to use up my scrapbook paper. And this was such a pretty picture of hydrangeas, so I had to copy it onto the tea, made a copy of it using the tea bag, or the teacup. This is another example of just how you can take and use things. This is some kind of pretty buttons that I folded a piece of Aida cloth in half and sewed the buttons on. This is paper from Downton Abbey, a book on Downton Abbey. Really pretty. It has a raised glitter on it, and I found a piece of purple paper that would match it or go with it, and I complemented it with the same pages here. I made a couple of little tags here with eyelet that had been dyed in green. And here's another piece of that 3D upholstered fabric. And this is jelly painted tags that I found from a woman that has a store on Instagram. Really neat article about the history of tea that I found in a Britannica magazine. Had to include that. You can't have a picture without Big Ben if you're going to do a book on clocks. This is in my thrift store. There are people who do these elaborate projects, and then they lose interest and they donate it. So you pick up a plastic bag that has a bunch of people's projects in them, and you don't really know what you're getting when you come home. But this is an example of something. It's Bargello, maybe. Yeah, it's a beautiful pattern. And I have put it in here along with some sari silk and a key charm. This is more paper that I found that had tea macaroons and things on it. And then I found some handmade paper, and I added a couple of tea pictures to that. A couple of more charms. This charm is of a book. For the pages that were really thick and that take up the width of the book, I wanted to protect them, so I put some tracing paper in between some of the pages. This is another one of my teapots that I had to make. A picture of an edition of Walden by Henry Thoreau. This is a collage where I put together a bunch of pictures of things from libraries, typewriter stamps, dictionary pages, and kind of made it into a collage. And then I use a light coat of this silver acrylic paint over some of it to protect the surface. And this is an interesting recipe. It is where you take and make meringue, and then you stick a cherry in it, and you use it when you are having tea. And so it's a covered meringue covered cherry that you've put in the oven just for a few minutes to get it lightly browned. And here's the recipe. I included that in here. I love to make my own tags that have layers to them. And then I found some beautiful magazine pictures and books pictures of some beautiful tea tables set up with tea, and I included some of those. The paper's of good quality. It's a shiny, glossy paper and thick. This is for notes. She said she probably wouldn't write that much in the books, so I didn't include a lot of pages just for writing, but she could use this for that. This is a history of the typewriter, all the way from a big clunky giant to a tiny little 2001 is the latest. So how typewriters have become more condensed over time. And this is an example of one of the first ones that were done. This is one of my teacups that I put an angel on. It says, "Be an angel, come and have tea with me." Stuck a little tea bag in there. This is an advertisement for a Smith typewriter. And then a greeting card that you can take out and use. And of course, I've added some complimentary lace around the page. And I have put some charms, and this is some eyelash trim. This is the second side of the collage for the card catalog that had checkout cards, and the first cards that they made those cards were put on playing cards, the size of playing cards, and then they made it into the 3x5 cards and converted these made cabinets that had the 3x5 size cards. This is an interesting article picture about how disarrayed the Library of Congress was before it had its building, and how long it took for the building to be built. And the book that I found about the history of the Library of Congress was very interesting, and that's out of that book. Here's another typewriter, and then I have a book here of different, over the years, the different kinds of teapots that have been created in different countries. It's really, really an interesting article. This is more of the Royal Doulton. This is a piece of tissue paper that I found that I laid out with some adornment on it. Used a glassine bag and another typewriter. And this is a decoration that I put seashells in there. And a card. And then just beautiful table setting of china on this picture that has, you know, the flowers and the wallpaper and everything just beautiful. It's really hard to not want to cut into those magazines and books and use them in these books that I make. This is a Jane Austen postcards. This is a page she could use for either writing or for putting her own creations on. And this is flashcards from teaching piano lessons. Shows on the piano where the letter is, and it shows what it's called, what it is. It's really an interesting way to teach piano. And then this I found with these that is made out of, that has that acrylic or that paper on it, transparency paper. This is one of the Royal Daltons, and this one is 1990. This is a simulation, or sort of like a library card, taking a piece of scrapbook paper and then putting a couple of tags in there. Another one of this is a thatched roof English house that they used. It's called Girl Outside Cottage. Really, really interesting. Sort of a display of Big Ben with another clock and some different sayings. And then this is where I have put some tea bags that if you wanted to have loose leaf tea, you can use those tea bags. This is a piece of fabric that I found, really long, really big piece of fabric, and it had all these panels of different designs of different teas or different quotes or different things about tea. This is a teapot that has insects on it, and it's called Cinnamon Spices and Tea. And of course it's very wide. It takes up a lot of space or thickness to the book. So I was only able to put one, but this is the one I picked because I just thought cinnamon spices and tea would be a good one to put in there. These tags came from a craft show, but they're Chinese, and then they have these really thin, lacy drawings, pictures, cutouts that are just so dainty and pretty, and I don't want to mess it up too bad. But that's what these are. Stuck it here in this with another large teapot. She can use this for a picture frame if she wants, or however she wants to use these loose pages if she doesn't want to write in them. This is a watercolor of Big Ben. Some vellum. This is another piece of the 3D upholstery fabric. Had all kinds of little, I put some glitter in it, and then I added a handmade tag that had a clock on it. This is an interesting project that a woman did, someone did, and turned it and donated it to the scrap store. Lots of different beautiful pictures on fabric, and she painted it with fabric paint. It looks pretty good, actually, but evidently she lost interest in it. I found this piece of lace that matched the color. The color went with it nicely. So I have made a pocket out of it. This is from Amy Butler's book called Blossom. And this is another one of Mrs. Cogg's pictures of a little girl doing her homework. Another teapot made out of a Japanese thin paper, or Chinese. More eyelash trim with a charm of a teapot. This is a beautiful piece of fabric that I found, or that I actually purchased in a bundle, and it has flowers and embroidery around it, leaves, all in this pale lavender, just beautiful. Some sequins and some pearls in there, and it's a thin fabric, so I lined it with a piece of acetate so that it wouldn't mess with the detail of the beautiful fabric. This was a tablecloth. It had round circles in it that were embroidered and then crocheting. It was about the size of a bridge table. And so it's just so pretty that I had to include that in here in a pocket. And here's a couple of doilies and then another recipe. And this is a beautiful piece of scrapbooking paper that I found. The last picture of the cottages. Can't have a book without having these in there. These library cards. Another tea bag. A grandfather clock. Famous teas, Jubilee tea with some more recipes in it. This is another piece of the upholstery fabric. And I kind of made it cuts out into like a tulip shape and a couple of tags that have typewriters on them. And then this is a half of a doily or half of a hand-dyed piece of fabric that probably was a tabletop, and I fanned it so that it could be used as a little tuck spot. So that concludes this book. Hope you got some ideas from it. I'm looking forward to